I know I can climb up, 'cause you're the ground beneath it all, and you make anywhere feel like home. Home isn't where we live, it's living by your side. Oh, and I can't imagine any other way. The way our world needs your touch in every space, and how it makes any place feel like home.
Welcome back to Not Enough Nelsons. Today I am doing the final of the series of why and how did I adopt 9 kids and how do we become a family with 16 kids. And so if you are not a member of NenFam, I would encourage you to go back and watch all of it so that you know where I left off. If you are new, welcome, and I'm so excited to have you. If you are a member of the NenFam, you know that by this time in my story, I had 14 kids. 14. That's a huge number. I actually, when I was little, I dreamed of having 7. I always just thought I would have 5 and adopt 2, and it ended up that I had 7 and adopted 9. So life just gives you amazing blessings, and I have been so blessed. Okay, so at this point, I had 14 kiddos. We had just had the 3 little kids, DeLayNee and Elsie and Beckham, placed with us. And at that time, I had PaisLee and Presley, who were also like 3 and under. So I had 5 kids under the age of 3. Yeah, that was a rough time. That coupled with having teenagers and just the whole gamut, it was a little bit of a rough time. And like I said in previous videos, that was probably one of my most overwhelming times in my life. That is when I felt so divided, and when I had the beautiful answer that I have on my wall right here that says, you will not be divided, you will be multiplied like the fishes and the loaves. And I indeed was being multiplied. But even with the Lord's help, it was a rough time during that time. As a mother, I was just trying to do my very, very best. And, you know, kids struggle, and they struggle through teenage years, and just with trauma, it just makes everything so fuzzy. And there's just so much anger their hearts have, and they just don't know where to place that anger. And sadly, a lot of times it gets placed on mom and dad, and there was just a lot of hard things going on during that time. But one bright light is our cute NayVee. So I have to back up a little bit and tell you, I have to catch you up with NayVee's story. And so if you watch the other videos, I'm sorry if I'm repeating, but I just want you to know all of NayVee's journey up to this point. And so again, we had NayVee placed with us when she was just 2 months old, and she was with us for a whole year of her life. And she was just such a special and just a sweet, sweet baby. There was a time, so when she first came to us, she had what sometimes they refer to as meth hands, and so her hands were just super tight and clenched, and she just couldn't open them, and she wouldn't open them. And so one of the very first baths I gave her, I just had to like work open her little hands and clean all the little crevices, and they just had little dirt and just everything in them. I just cleaned them all out, and I could just tell it felt really good to her. And so from that point on, for a few months, that was kind of our tradition, that I would just like open her little hands and rub her little hands. And there was such a sweet time when she was just little, and I was just sitting there. I was on the bed sitting by her, and we were just kind of playing and talking, and there was a song that came on, which is In the Arms of an Angel, and I just started singing it to her, and she put up her little hand like this. She was just little, and she just knew that she needed to have her little hands rubbed. And so I was just rubbing her little hands and singing this song to her. And I just can't even express the look on her face. I have never felt like. I have never felt like an angel that much in my life, but the way that she looked at me, you would have thought I was. And I started listening to the words of that song, "In the arms of an angel, fly away from here, from that dark, cold hotel room." I think it says endless in fear. Anyway, it was like her little soul was speaking to mine. And in that moment, I just loved her so much, and I wanted to be that angel for her that could keep her safe. But fast forward a few months, and it was a beautiful thing and a wonderful thing that her birth mom was able to get clean and get her life ready to have her back. And so she went back with her birth mom, and that was such a hard time. It was such a hard time for her. It just broke my heart. Every time I would go to drop her off, she would just start crying, and she was so like, she was just little, and she'd like clench onto me and hold on to me, and I'd have to kind of like pry her little arms off to get her to hand her over. And oh, my heart was breaking, as you can imagine. It was breaking for her. Now I knew and I loved her mom, and I was so happy that her birth mom was getting, you know, her life straightened out, that she could mother her again. But my heart broke for NayVee because she didn't understand what was going on, you know, and she was already calling us mom and dad. And you can imagine, as a new baby, you know, spending the whole, like, you know, basically first year of your life with these people, you would understand them to be your parents. And so it was really, really hard and traumatic. And I had a hard time, and I needed to have some answers. I was just like, Lord, I don't know how to do this with love, because I just feel so bad for this baby. And so I had a dear friend give me a book. It's called The Lullaby, and it is a beautiful story about like a teenage girl who was pregnant, and she was going to give her baby up for adoption, and she traveled and she stayed that last week before she gave birth in the family that she was chosen to be her baby's adoptive parent. So she stays there in the room, the actual room that her baby will live in, and she reflects on all the special things that her little baby will do, and the scene that she will see outside of her window, and just all of the love she's gonna feel from these parents. And this baby ends up being stillborn, and she's packing up her stuff to leave. The parents come in, they put their arm around her, and they tell her that over just those few days that she has been there, that they had just fallen in love with her, and in her situation she didn't have parents, and that they loved her and wanted to adopt her. And that just did a whole mental shift for me. Like, instead of looking at NayVee and her pain only, I was able to expand my compassion for her birth mom, and I was able to look at her birth mom like she also needs love, she also needs support, she also needs you know, like a safe ear to talk to. And so I befriended her mom, and that was the very best thing for everybody. And I know it's so hard in those situations, and every situation's different, so no judgment from me at all. But you birth moms out there, you adoptive moms out there, you foster moms out there, the more that you can find love for each other in the capacity that you can, the more beneficial it is to the child. Absolutely. And so I was able to find great love for NayVee's birth mom. And so I ended up being able to pass her on to her mom with love and affection, and we stayed in touch, and she would let us babysit her sometimes. And so it was really actually very healing for everybody involved. Fast forward a few years, and her birth mom relapsed. The DCFS placed her back with us from age 3 to 4. During that time, I just tried really hard to keep in my heart that we are loving her and giving her a safe place, so that her mom can heal and her mom can just get better and pull herself out of this addiction that is crippling. And I just kept that love for her mom. And so she ended up going back to her birth mom at age 4. And again, I kept that open relationship where I actually loved her birth mom. It really helped it so that she could trust us, and she would have her come to our house often, and I babysat her, and she was still a big part of our lives. Then around, I think that NayVee was about 6 or 7, her mom, I could tell that stuff was kind of happening, and she had her with us for almost a month one time, and it just got to the point where it was obvious that things were not going well in her birth mom's life. And without sharing too many details, because that's not mine to share, NayVee was with us from like 6.5 until it was when she was 11 years old that finally there had been back and forth, and just tears from like age 6 to 8, but then there had been a couple years where we hadn't really heard anything from her birth family. And so one day we were shopping and NayVee happened to see her birth mom across the store. And her birth mom didn't see her, but she saw her birth mom, and she ran to me, and it was like this real, true, raw fear. Like it was almost like she was climbing up me. Like she was just like, Mom, don't let her take me, she's here. And just this panic face. And so I just left the shopping cart, we walked out, and I tried to explain to her, she can't take you, like you've been with us for, and I thought in my heart, like, wait a minute, like it's not permanent, you know what I mean? And I thought I need to do something about this. And so I needed to make a decision that was difficult for me because I had never done this before in this capacity, but I needed to call the DCFS and I needed to advocate for NayVee to be adopted and to have it be a final and stable situation where she knew no matter what that nobody could come back and take her away from the safety that she has felt and the love that she had felt. And so we went through that process and we were able to adopt NayVee when she was 11 years old. And I literally got the chills just thinking about it. It was such a special and sacred day. We were driving there, we had all the kids in the back, and I turned around, there was a song on the radio, and I turned around and I said, NayVee, do you remember this song? And it was a song that had been playing on a bus when I had went with her on a field trip in school. Her mom let me go with her once on a field trip, and this song was playing and she loved it, and we would sing it really loud, and I just kind of shared that with her. And then I turned on the song that I had rubbed her little hands to in the arms of Angel, and I was like, and NayVee, this is your special song too. And I kind of told her a little bit about that moment, and she was just really quiet and everyone else was excited and giggling, and I kind of like turned around to look at her and make sure she was okay, and she just had tears streaming down her face and a great big smile, like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. And she just really got it. Like she just really understood what it meant to be in a family who loves you and where you feel safe. Sadly, a lot of times when you're adopted as a child, especially if you've experienced trauma, as an adopted parent, I've just noticed like they've been removed from everything that they know. They don't come to you like, oh, thank you so much for saving me, because they don't understand that side of it. What they understand is the people that they loved, even if it wasn't a good situation, they've been ripped from that, and it's so traumatic and it's so hard. And you as birth parents have to kind of look at that and say, you know what, it hurts your heart super bad because you just wish so bad that they could be like, I love you, thank you so much, and understand the capacity of what you're doing and adopting them and loving them for the rest of your life and their life and for all eternity, really. But NayVee had been through so much that she fully understood what was happening, and that was really kind of cool. It was really special. And we drove there and we got there, and the judge was talking to all of us, and we're doing all the things with the the attorneys and everything in the courtroom. And the judge looked at NayVee and he said, NayVee, do you want to be adopted by the Nelsons? And oh my gosh, every time I talk about it, it brings me to tears because it was so special. So the judge said this to her, and I looked over at her, and she just, with these tears just streaming down her face, but fully composed like NayVee always is, she said, yes, I want to be adopted by the Nelsons. And she goes like this with her little hand, and she goes, because I finally feel safe. It was so cute. And she just started weeping, and her little shoulders were hunched over, and she was just like that gut cry, that deep soul cry. She was crying so hard, and there was not a dry eye in that courtroom. Like even the judge was just everybody, and she had just been through so much. By that point, so much fear, so much anxiety of what was going to happen as she went back and forth, that it really hit home to her, and that was just so special. I've never had to feel like NayVee didn't fully comprehend all that we were doing to try to love her, and NayVee has always had a genuine love and gratitude for Benji and I, and that is so special because sometimes it's hard. It's hard to be an adoptive mama sometimes because you love your kiddos so much, whether they're biological or adopted, and sometimes they just don't grasp it. You know, they have all this anger inside and they want to throw it somewhere, and so generally it gets thrown usually at you. And that is one thing with NayVee, is she has like a maturity and like an old soul where she just understands, and she's just so caring and loving and forgiving of anything that I don't do great as a mom or that I struggle with. She's just always been such just a sweet and understanding human being, and I just love NayVee. Okay, so at this point I had 15 kids. Things were going a little bit better with, you know, the teenagers and having the littler kids, and by this time that little group of 5 under 3, they had grown to, like, I think it was 5 under the age of like 7 or so. And so things were just, I kind of thought I had the hang of things, and never think you have the hang of things. And then at one point, I just have to tell you this as a precursor to this story. During all of this, I actually did get pregnant after PaisLee. And I miscarried that baby. It was really difficult. I felt like it was a little boy, and I felt like his body just wasn't right, and that I needed to make my body whole, and I was just going through a lot of really hard times, just mothering so many and things at the time, and so I just felt like it was just maybe just not right, and I had made peace with it, honestly, and I thought, okay, 15 is our number. Like, I just knew, I'm like, 15, we're done, and we're done with adoptions, I think, unless some miracle happens and Heavenly Father speaks right to me, we're done. So we had sat down to a family night, and I had made a video. This was before we had YouTube, but I had put together like a little video slideshow of like pictures of all the kids kind of growing up, and I had set it to this song called Symphony, and it was David Archuleta singing it, and it's just a beautiful song, and I just wanted to let every one of them know how included they are and how much I love each one of them. And so I tried to really make it something that would just inspire them all to feel love for, you know, our family and that family unit. And so we watched that, and it was so good. And afterwards, the kids were kind of over all getting their treat for family night or whatever, and I was putting away the computer and unplugging the cords, and PaisLee walks over while I'm doing that, and she's like, Mom, and her little voice started cracking, and she's like, oh, it's a really special video, Mom. And I'm like, oh, thanks, I'm so glad you liked it. And she said, it kind of made me miss my little brother though. And I'm like, your little brother? Okay, keep in mind she was like 5 years old at this time, and I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, you know, the little brother, you know, the little brother that we had, but he died. And I'm like listening more, and I like kind of called over Benji, and Kass was right there, and we sat back on the couch a little bit, and I said, no, tell me more. And she said, you know, and she started kind of getting frustrated with me. She's like, you know, the little brother, one whose body wasn't right and he had to go back up to heaven, and she just started crying these little tears, and I'm like, oh, okay, I remember him. And because I had a miscarriage, I thought maybe somehow she like knows this, or I don't know. And she's like, I said, how do you remember that? And she said, well, remember he like came and he played with me. We were playing with the dolls, and we like made a train, and she's like telling me all this stuff, how she played with this little boy. And she's like, but then his body it wasn't good, and he had to go back to heaven. And she's just crying through all of this, and she's like, I don't remember his name. Do you remember his name? And I'm like, I don't. And she's like, oh, why can't I remember his name? And she goes, just a minute. And she gets on her little knees and she says a prayer, and me and Benji and Kass are just sitting there with like tear-stained cheeks, and we're like, and she sits back up and she says, I still don't remember his name. It was so cute. And I was like, PaisLee, that is such a special memory. And I said, you know what? Maybe he'll be with us in heaven. When we go to heaven, maybe he will be there with us. And she's like, I guess. She just had this memory that was so real for her. And I said, you know what? Mommy had a baby in her tummy, and his body wasn't right, and he did have to go to heaven. And that's very special that you got to play with him. And I talked to her about it, and she was okay, and I was okay. Like, our hearts were okay. We just felt like, you know, we would see that little buddy in heaven. But I knew, guys, I knew 15 was my number. I was like 44 years old. Like, I was done, and my body was tired, and we were done, we thought. And then yeah, one day, it was a Sunday, the kids had all gone to church and were going out the door, and I was a little bit late, and I was just kind of feeling not so great. And I had this really old test. It was probably like from when I had my miscarriage. I'm not kidding. It was just like left over in my bathroom stuff. And I was like, should I just take that test just to see? Maybe I will. And so I took it, and I was sitting there in my bathroom. I just told the rest of the kids, I'm like, you know what? You guys just go. Benji was the bishop at the time, and I'm like, you guys just go. And the older kids took them, and I just sat there in my bathroom, and I waited, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. And so then I go and I look at the test. it was positive. Oh my gosh. I was almost 45 years old, and the doctor told me that I had less than 0.5% of a chance of getting pregnant at my age on my own. Yeah, little ledger. Crazy. I wish I could say that I jumped for joy. I didn't at the moment. This is pretty much the only time I've ever found out I was pregnant that I cried. It wasn't because I was sad. Of course, I was so happy to be having a baby, but I cried because I was so confused. Like, I just felt like we were complete, like we were done. And there I am looking at these two little lines, and I'm like, and I don't know, I was just bawling. And then the only thing I could think of is, it's that little guy. It's that little guy that PaisLee told us about a few months ago. And that just like calmed all my fears. And it just like, I don't know, it just brought such a peace to my heart about the whole situation. And I'm so grateful that Heavenly Father allowed PaisLee to remember that memory, because it really like softened the blow, and I kind of like felt like held in that moment, and I just knew everything would be okay. And so crazy, the kids all came home from church. I didn't make it to church. I was gaining my composure, and everyone comes home from church, and yeah, I kept it a secret for about a day because I wanted to tell them in a really special way. But I told them, and I actually filmed it. That was right when we were starting YouTube. In fact, if you go back and watch our very first video, there was only 2 people, maybe 3, who knew about it. And it's only because Trey stumbled in on me when I was crying, and so Trey knew. And Cassie came home early from church, so she knew. I'm trying to remember back. My brain's a little fuzzy, people, but just a couple of them knew. And so actually when Trey chose our name, Not Enough Nelsons, he winked at me because he knew there was not quite enough Nelsons yet, because there was one right here. And so cute Trey really came up with that name right there on the spot. And I love our name, Not Enough Nelsons, but that was inspired by little Ledger being in my tummy. And anyway, when I told everybody, they were so excited, like so cute. There were tears and screaming, and everyone was so excited, and they were so supportive. I got super sick again, with like I do with all my babies, but for the most part everybody was just so sweet and so uplifting. And I was a little afraid to have a baby at 45 because there can be a lot of complications, but as you guys saw in the birth video, he was born and he was beautiful. And I still remember him just like looking up at me, and he was just trying to open his little eyes and look at me. And I just thought, are you the one? Are you the one that little spirit came to visit our little PaisLee? And just such a special kid. You know, Ledger is such a bright light to our family. He is such a, he's just a gift. It was just like Heavenly Father knew where my heart was and knew that I was so grateful and happy with my 15. And it's like, he just was like, you know what? Here's a little cherry on top of this whole beautiful thing that you have. And Ledger's just been a great gift from heaven for sure. And guys, we became sweet 16. So, and you guys have been there for a big part of that last portion. Like, you guys have been there through this story, and I really hope and pray that these stories that I've shared, that you realize that they are sacred treasures to me and to my babies. And I've tried so hard to be delicate, not to share too much of their stories, and just to kind of share it from my version. So I just hope that you can know that these things are my heart, and just to kind of like try not to trample over them. But so many of you, I feel like I know, and I know many of you feel like you know us, and I'm just so glad that we've been able to share with you these miracles of these beautiful 16 children that Benji and I have been given. And I feel like we're still babies in our own mind, and we're just trying so hard to be the best parents we can, and we make mistakes, you know. We've made so many. And so one bit of advice I would get out there to the world of you parents, just know, like, you're doing your best, you know, and just keep doing your best. And some days your best might look like crap. I wrote this down the other day because I thought about it. Flowers bloom the very brightest when you add a little bit of crap to their soil. And so just know you're doing great, and just keep loving on those kiddos. And when you make mistakes, say you're sorry, and hope that everybody can find compassion for each other and your family. And I don't know, I wish I could just give you my heart and just say, you know, you're doing okay. Because after 27 years of trying my hardest, I know that that's one thing that we need to hear is you're doing your best, and that's all you can do. You guys, I love you all so much. Thank you so much for watching all of our amazing stories. And I say I love you, but I actually do mean it. I really do love you all so much. Bye-bye.
Feels completely empty when you're not in the wings. How could I have known the fortune I would find, a peace deep in my